Code Vein 2 had me in the training room for hours, testing builds, spamming abilities, and putting that poor minion through it, I'm telling you. I actually had tons of fun, switching weapons, unlocking new abilities, finding combinations that just worked. There's something addictive about tweaking a build, stepping back into a fight, and seeing it pay off. In Code Vein 2, all the systems are separated now, which I believe is a major upgrade from the first Code Vein. So you have your blood codes, which are essentially your class system, and they allow you to change your fighting styles, your base stats, basically act as your foundation for your character builds. You have your weapon forme, which is basically your abilities, and they are divided in their own specific categories. You have combat forme, which is your weapon attacks, magic forme, which is long distance attacks, and support forme that grant various buffs and enhancements. In the first Code Vein, these two systems were actually tied together. Each blood code had its own set of unique abilities, but some abilities were restricted to certain blood codes, so you couldn't really mix and match as much. Now, with the system separated, it gives you more flexibility and less restrictions when creating your builds. There are so many different weapons to choose from one-handed swords, great swords, hammers, halberds, bayonets, and now they added dual blades and rune blades for Code Vein 2. Rune blades being my absolute favorites, my babies. I just think they're so cool, the floating swords and the weapon abilities that come with the rune blades. I just love them so much. I spent most of the game using rune blades. So they also did an amazing job upgrading the parry system, which now they categorize as defensive forme. So in the first Code Vein, you were just restricted to a traditional parry. Now they give you even more options. So you can go the traditional route and parry your way through the game, or you can use a shield, and some of these shields have special effects like turning the enemy into stone. So cool. Or they also give evasive options, so you can like dash side to side or do a vertical jump. I appreciate having the options because depending on my mood or the type of enemy, I don't want to try and parry all the time. I want to dash really quickly or block them with my shield. Gels have also been separated and upgraded into their own system. Gels are used to drain enemies of Ichor, which is your MP points or magic points. You need Ichor in order to use your abilities. There's different gels that you can use, but my favorite is the Stinger because it knocks the enemies back and it gives you room to like breathe and recover your magic points. The back attack is so much better now in Code Vein 2. You can actually crouch, and that lets the system know what you're about to do. Because in Code Vein, the very first game, oh my gosh, like you had to be in a specific angle in order to perform back attacks. Like it just wasn't consistent. But in Code Vein 2, you have a crouch now, which lets the system know, yo, I'm going for it, okay? And back attacks are so much easier to perform now. I really like the addition of Bequeathed Forme, and these are weapons that you can summon during battle. There is a variety of these too. As you can see, they're gigantic and they definitely turn the tide of battle in your favor. I had fun experimenting with all these and I was excited every time I unlocked a new one. Now, enemies can hit you while you're trying to use these weapons, so timing is key, but they're a great addition to the battle system. Of course, even with all the freedom and flexibility the game gives you when creating your builds, there still needs to be some kind of limitation, right? And that's where the new burden system comes in. In Code Vein 2, burden determines how your equipped gear affects your stats. Weapons, forme, and other equipment all add to your burden. And if it goes past a stats limit, your character becomes overburdened. Being overburdened comes with penalties like slower dodges, reduced mobility, or higher stamina costs. But at the same time, pushing your burden can increase things like damage or Iker gain. As you can see in this example here, my mind stat is overburdened. The threshold is 34, but currently it's at 41. Now I get a benefit of increased maximum Iker, but I also get a penalty, which is during combat, I will suffer constant HP damage whenever I don't have a buff going on.
I didn't really mind the burden system, just at times it did get like a little annoying when I had a very specific build in mind.
So the gameplay loop really becomes this back and forth. You pressure the enemy, you burn through your abilities, and when you're out of Iker, you drain the enemy to replenish it, then go right back in and repeat. And honestly, the battle system feels heavily dependent on ability usage. This is because basic attacks don't really do much on their own, especially in boss fights. But the good thing is, at least they let you spam most abilities as long as you have Iker. You know, in a lot of Souls-like games, there's usually a delay between attacks or it takes forever to get an attack off. But in Code Vein 2, most of these abilities, as long as you have the right amount of Iker, you can just spam. And the game makes it very clear early on maybe why it was designed this way. Because of the boss aggression. And you find out pretty quickly how aggressive these bosses are with the first major boss fight, which is this fight right here against France. These bosses are aggressive. They don't wait their turn. They don't give you space. It's almost like they know when your health is low. They know when you're trying to heal, and they know when they're about to die. They definitely know when they're about to die, because that last stretch of HP, some of these bosses, they just go crazy. Whatever system they have detecting that, it's like tuned up to the max. Good thing is, companions are just as helpful here in Code Vein 2 as they were in the first game. Mainly because they draw aggro, interrupt enemy pressure, and give you breathing room when fights start spiraling. They also have certain trait bonuses that they give you as well. So in the first Code Vein, companions had their own health bar, and if they died, they were gone until you rested at a missile. You could revive them with a certain ability mid-fight, but it costs some of your own health. Now in Code Vein 2, it's completely different and more forgiving. If you go down, companions automatically revive you. Then they go on a cooldown instead of disappearing permanently. So as long as you survive that cooldown window, companions come back. Basically unlimited revives. And on top of that, you now have the option to absorb companions for a temporary stat boost, and this is called the assimilation system. With how aggressive these bosses are, that added flexibility feels intentional. The story in Code Vein 2 takes place in a time when humans and revenants coexist, barely holding things together. A century ago, a group of legendary heroes sealed away the resurgence, saving what remained of the world. But now, that seal is weakening, and the world is teetering on the brinks of collapse once more. In the first Code Vein, you played as a revenant, a vampire-like being. In Code Vein 2, you are now a revenant hunter, caught in the midst of it all. A girl named Lou saves your life by giving you half her heart. Lou has the ability to travel through time, and together you journey back roughly 100 years to meet the heroes before they were sealed away in cocoons. Instead of uncovering forgotten memories like in the first game, Code Vein 2 sends us directly into the past. We don't just restore fragments of what happened, we live through it.
I hate rats.
The heroes aren't rediscovering their stories, we are, and the choices and decisions we make along the way can alter the present. In the first game, the emotion comes from revelation. In Code Vein 2, the emotion comes from understanding, and I actually felt closer to these characters because of that. Because I wasn't just watching their memories unfold, I was actually walking with them, fighting alongside them, and trying to prevent the very tragedies that led to their sacrifice. One of the biggest changes in Code Vein 2 is the shift from a linear world to an open world, but they kept the same theme. ruined cities. It's a tough theme to make exciting, and personally, I do have mixed feelings. There are some impressive elements. Many areas feature tall buildings, which create striking views when you're exploring or looking across the map. It feels like the developers leaned heavily on towering structures to make the ruined cities visually appealing. There are some pretty cool standout locations, like the amusement park, which is my personal favorite. But then there are spots that fall flat. Take the sunken pylon, for example. It's just this cage space underwater, and that's it. I felt like they could have gone harder and made it more magical or visually exciting. There are other areas like this too, where the world ends up feeling a bit plain, despite some cool design moments. Overall, I think the open world design is okay. The map isn't too big or too small. It's a comfortable size for exploration. Eventually, you will unlock a motorcycle to help traverse the map, which is handy for long distances. However, it doesn't handle rough terrain very well, so I mostly found myself walking until the end game when clearing up trophies. For players like me who enjoy checking every corner, there's plenty to discover. New weapons, abilities, and items await those willing to explore. But that being said, some complaints about rewards are fair. Sometimes you will put effort into exploring or fighting through enemies, only to open a chest and find something small, or find like a random food item. Some areas are multi-leveled too. So there would be like a top level or a middle level or a lower level, but the map only shows one level. So those areas can be difficult and confusing to navigate. I definitely got lost in those areas because I'm like, which level am I on? But the map only shows one level. It doesn't show all the levels. So that was definitely a con for me. When it comes to enemy variety in Code Vein 2, this is probably one of the areas where the game feels a little disappointing and inconsistent. And the first game had the same problem. Because on one hand, the enemy designs themselves are actually really good. I like them. A lot of them look unique. The movesets are interesting, and the main bosses especially, in my opinion, were done very well. But at the same time, the game does lean pretty heavily on repeating enemies. Out in the open world, you'll start noticing the same enemies showing up again and again. Sometimes they're just different shades or slightly altered versions of enemies you've already fought. I think my main issue with the enemy repetition is some enemies that you constantly see in the open world, they will reuse as mini bosses in the storyline that you have to defeat in order to progress the story. And that just didn't make sense to me. Why are we using an enemy that we constantly see? Like, I know y'all have more designs out there. Are y'all saving them for like a DLC or the next game or something? Now, there were some enemies I was getting tired of seeing, and this gigantic mini boss definitely was one of them. It has a massive health bar, and the first time you run into it, it feels like a huge moment, almost like you found a hidden boss. And it hits like a truck though. So those first fights are intense. But later on, it starts showing up in multiple places, even in quests. I really like the design, but it got a little annoying after a while. I just started snaking around and avoiding it. I've had my fair share of fights with this thing. Now, to be fair, a lot of games reuse enemies and bosses, so this isn't unusual. But for some reason though, it just felt a little more noticeable in Code Vein 2. But there were enough enemies in the game where it didn't really ruin the experience for me. The character creator in Code Vein 2 is just as amazing as the first game. As you probably noticed throughout this video, I had a few different variations of my character. Okay, I have a ton of variations of my character, and the game lets you save different appearances, which is really nice. There are tons of options when it comes to hairstyles, facial features, colors, and accessories, and they even expanded things like different hair highlight patterns or the ability to make your hair longer or shorter or fuller. They also gave us more control over body composition and facial features. I do wish a few things were a little less restrictive though. So when it comes to skin tones, they have a limited color range compared to other color options. like hair, clothing, and accessories, you get the full range of colors to choose from. It would have been nice if we got the full range for skin tones as well. Now, when it comes to outfits, we do get more choices compared to the first game, so that's awesome. But they still have restrictions on how you can customize the outfits. So they do let you remove like certain pieces of the outfits, but you may not be able to remove a piece that you really want to remove, so it's restricted there. And some pieces are permanent to the outfit. So some outfits you cannot change the boots, you have to keep them the same. So it would have been cool if we were able to mix and match more pieces of the outfits. It would have given us even more customization, but it's pretty cool that we get way more options compared to the first game, and the DLC outfits have been pretty cool as well. I also wish there was some kind of mirror or copy option for the accessories, especially placing things like the horns. It can be pretty difficult to line them up perfectly on both sides, so having like a mirror or copy option would be so helpful. But overall, it's still a really strong character creator, and I definitely had fun spending a lot of time making my different characters.
After spending over 80 hours in Code Vein 2, seeing all 3 endings, and earning the Platinum Trophy, all in one playthrough I might add, I can honestly say I had a lot of fun with it. And don't you just love when games let you get all the achievements in one playthrough? The combat is solid, the build freedom is great, and the characters kept me invested throughout the journey. There are definitely some rough edges, like repeated enemies and crazy boss aggression that might not be for everyone. And the story not following the first game could be disappointing to fans. But overall, if you enjoyed the first Code Vein, there's a good chance you will enjoy this one too. Let me know what you think of Code Vein 2 down in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you guys!